Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. I'm just making sure. Oh, here we go. They move all these buttons around unnecessarily. And it makes life difficult. Alright. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I wanted to talk today about several things, and I haven't done a live stream in quite some time, and I wanted to do one to stay in touch. I reused this iced latte cup that I had earlier and made myself another iced latte at home. It's vanilla, by the way, which is great. So all nice, comfy, and cozy to discuss some of the more niche things I wanted to. So I'm just going to read some of the topics from the notes that I have. One of them is just the beauty of trees that I've been noticing more recently. Because I take time to go around my community and stop and ponder at each tree, because I have the luxury to do so, it's almost like you make these connections with the trees because they provide so much shade, and all over them you'll see insects and birds and fruit and stuff, and it really is quite pleasing. And there have been some arborists who've been taking down some of our more larger trees. And one thing that's quite sad about seeing a giant tree be cut down is you realize how many years it took to grow. And the smell is quite nice when they take down a pine or a birch tree, even a redwood tree. It's very fragrant. But it's also quite unique when you go to the pine after it's been cut, and eventually you see sap coming from where the branch was taken off. And I've been doing a lot of research about trees, and I really thought it was interesting when I came across the fact that said if a tree saps too much, it can die. And if you are constantly cutting up a tree by taking branches off too close together in the intervals, it can actually kill the tree. And learning about how even rabbits, they'll chew on the bark of the tree and debark it, which will kill it. And I found that to be quite fascinating, because the more you look at a tree, you're like, wow, it's such a blessing, because it provides you shade in places that are hot and firewood in places where you don't have electricity. And the rate at which trees are cut down, which leads a lot to be discussed, and how they are not planted as fast, really can make you think about how we have to be responsible humans on Earth, and how we have to keep trees around and be good keepers. Because we're charged with being good maintainers of Earth, I'd argue. Not only are we to spread Islam, but I think we are supposed to make the world better for everyone and every critter in it. And trees, it's quite remarkable when you see how each one has its cycle. There are these, Assalamu alaikum, Waisenkor, Fatuma, and the prevalence of Islam. We'll do Q&A after, so I'll do Q&A, anything you guys want to talk about after, but I want to get some of these ideas out of my head, because maybe you'll connect with it too. But there are some trees, like there is a magnolia flower tree in my community. There's actually a lot, by the way, and I look at them as they go through their cycle, and it's really cool because they don't always shed their leaves like the maple trees in the fall or some of the other leaf-bearing trees, but their leaves are like a dark green and they look waxy, and they grow these conifers, like these cones, and these cones look trippy if you look at them. they're closed and then they open up, and then there's like this red seeds all in the pod. And when they fall on the ground, it's like some of the seeds aren't poking out. But if you go up and you reach up, because some of these trees grow really tall, and you pluck off the cone, I got a couple. There's these red seeds inside, and then you see how much they sell for, and then you think about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, each one of those seeds, if they're fertile, can grow a tree. And if you imagine an entire side of a mountain covered in these floral trees, how beautiful that would be, and how fragrant these trees are. And then something really cool happened. So I started gathering up all these conifers, right? Put them in the bottom of the stroller, you know. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to just how do you sow these seeds? There's different ways, but I just took a couple that I said, okay, there's not that many in there. I'm just gonna toss these up the hill. So I toss them up the hill, and then a little later, I see squirrels eating the seeds out of the cones, and I was like, ah. And then I started looking under the trees, the magnolia flower trees, and I saw a lot of them were munched up from the squirrels. And I thought, well, would you look at that? A squirrel is like sitting there having a field day, munching up, and their strong teeth are grinding through the cone. So not only do you get the smell of the flowers on that tree and the shade from it, but you also get to feed the squirrels around you. And then when you think about the squirrels, they are edible, but I don't know if they are allowed to be eaten in Islam because they kind of have claws. So I'm not sure if you're allowed to eat a squirrel, but in some places in America in the South, there's squirrel hunting, you eat squirrels. Now, the fascinating thing about squirrels is they're food for the hawks and even the crows. The crows will eat baby squirrels. And coyotes, they like to eat the squirrels too. And so you notice how it's like this ecosystem. The turkey vultures as well. If there's a dead squirrel, the scavenger birds come and you get to see them soar about. It's really quite magnificent. And so I'm looking at this conifer cone. What I want to buy a book on trees and seeds, so I don't know the exact terminology, but the pod, whatever it is, and how that can grow multiple trees, which will sustain how many squirrels and how many birds, and how durable these trees are. They're very drought resistant because, you know, California always goes through droughts, and yet these trees remain. And their flowering season varies, obviously. And I just get to pay attention to how all the trees are doing, and I still remember even the places where some very big, beautiful trees were cut down. And even the stump, it'll be so glossy with this sap. And knowing that you can take sap, boil it down. I mean, maple syrup, it's like the blood of the maple tree when you really look at it. And how you boil it down, or some people have it raw, you name it. There's tons of stuff. But it's really cool just the behavior of each tree and their life cycle, how they grow, how they're these little teeny tiny fragile trees. And I've been walking past some place where 2 really tall pine trees were cut down. And I still think about them each time I pass it, okay? But I noticed there's a little sprig coming out of the ground, about maybe 6 inches tall. And I know it's a baby tree. And it's been sown there probably by itself because it probably got buried, but maybe because a squirrel buried it. Squirrels, they will bury seeds for winter time and for when there's like not too much food. And then what's funny about squirrels is they forget, obviously, where they buried their seeds. And so then a tree grows, but also sometimes a squirrel dies and is not able to retrieve the seed that it buried, right? We have a lot of acorn trees, and you'll see squirrels burying and looking for their acorn seeds. And it's just remarkable because I've gone past so many places now where I'm always scanning around looking. I stop and look at bugs. On the fennel plants, I'll see ladybugs. I'm very interested in the environment, our biome around us, and just how it's all so beautiful. And teaching my kids about nature, especially my youngest, she sees a roly-poly bug, we pick it up, we look at it. There's lots of wild rosemary, which means that when those flowers pop up on the rosemary bush, they are filled with honeybees. And different kinds of bees. Some are like the fluffy ones. I don't know the names of all the bees, but they're really fuzzy and bumbly. And then you go close, and if you don't bother them, because I wish I could have a beehive. My husband, he had beehives in Mexico, but I wish I could have that here, but I'm not able to. I'm not on that level. But I will pause and be real still and just watch them work, and you can hear the buzzing. Like, bzzz, it's so rhythmic and beautiful, and the fact that these little tiny bees just keep working until they die, and they make delicious honey. And I eat so much honey a month. I eat honey like over 4 tablespoons of raw, organic, non GMO honey a day. Because when you talk a lot or you just want a vitamin boost, honey is great. And when it's raw, a lot of the vitamins and minerals are more preserved, and the flavor it's so rich. And when you taste honey from different bees where they gathered, the honey tastes different. And so slowing down and observing nature around me has allowed me to teach my child the beauty of nature and the beauty of the trees around us. Because we have a lot of redwood trees, and these redwood trees are just magnificent, tall, and when you walk through them, the shade is so nice in a hot summer day. And then when you get out of the shade of the trees, it's blazing hot. And you start to think to yourself, in the future, are they just going to have to make concrete fake trees in order to have some of that sun off of you? And redwood trees, they are pretty strong. They endure the storms pretty well, the droughts pretty well, and their bark is pretty thick, so squirrels crawling on them doesn't do a whole lot of damage. And it's just magnificent how they breed, and they are in these clusters. And because of their shape, you walk through them and it's like, wow, like you feel like you're enclosed in like a little sanctuary. And you just start, as a mom, when you like leave the work life of that nasty city life and crammed offices and fluorescent lights, and you're just hearing and feeling the nature around you, slowing down, and then you're just thinking about Allah, and you're with your children, and it's just this peaceful, wonderful freedom. The fact that I get to see different types of butterflies and watch them, and slowing down and observing how there's all these insects on these trees, good and bad insects, by the way, because there are insects who can bring down a mighty tree. So that's not good. But there are medicines they can give trees to kind of stave off some burrowing burrowing bugs that really just kill the tree. And if you're ever curious, sometimes when a tree dies, if you hack a piece off and then you look at it, you'll see the burrows sometimes from those bugs where they just really took down that tree bit by bit. And it's quite sad, really. And I started thinking about my childhood, how my grandpa had four really, when I mean big trees, like trunks where you couldn't hug all the way around it. They were thick. Thick. And how I had kind of like a mini treehouse. It wasn't a real treehouse. It was like a couple boards that my grandpa installed, like planks where you could sit there and lay down, but there wasn't a roof, right? It was like a lookout, like a tree lookout. And most of my time as a kid was in parks and under trees. And I remember during the summer, as a kid, laying on the grass. My grandpa a swing on there, a rope swing. He tied a rope, and there he made a wooden discus, put the rope through it so I could swing. And these trees were so strong that they could handle that weight. So this is how big those trees were. I had to rake the leaves up in November and December, which was hard. But bags and bags of trees. If we would have had a goat, it wouldn't have been so bad because the goats would just eat the leaves. But, now that I'm older, I realized I should have talked my grandpa into getting a goat because we could have fed them for a long time with these leaves from those trees. And the sad part is I don't remember what kind of tree they were, but as a kid, not watching TV during that time period and laying on my back and staring up into this tree, hearing the wind blow the leaves around, the sun shining through it, how slow everything was, the ability to have a yard, all those blessings. I just think it's so marvelous. And when I lived in Philadelphia, there's not too many trees in Philadelphia. If you look at the design of the cities, you'll see that they don't even have spaces between some of these living quarters. And it's filled with crime and drugs. It's just disgusting. And you think to yourself, maybe that's what's making some people so dead inside, is because they're in this concrete, sterile hell. And some people, they go into the video game world, the open world video games, and they just do walks through nature. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a game that's commonly used in that way. Also The Witcher 3, because of an Avatar Frontiers, I believe it's called. But this idea where you live in a concrete hell of the city, where they've chopped down every tree, ripped out every flower, and now it's just concrete and the smell of garbage and the smell of buses and cars, and there's no game besides pigeons. And now they go to the video game world and they feel this sort of catharsis and therapy through this digital medium. And so it just got me to thinking about how, as women, if your husband can let you live in a place where there is some nature, you're quite blessed. You're quite blessed. Oftentimes, you'll hear people say, it's not that big of a deal to live in a city, and they just shop a lot. That's their therapy. But I think contentment is important for us, and if we want to be patient with suffering in this world, spending time in nature is one of those. And nature, how can anyone think of nature without thinking of plants, trees, shrubs, you name it? And trees, when you see them and you actually get to know your community and you just slow your life down. You watch the birds playing in them, the nests. Like, I've spotted some squirrel nests. I've never found a crow nest. I really want to find a crow nest because I've never seen a baby crow. But crows are very smart, so I'm not trying to bother them, but I really like our local crows. I haven't found a crow nest, but I've even seen a barn owl. And one of the most magnificent moments of my life was where I was walking and it was sunset. And I wear glasses to see far away. And when when I'm not wearing my glasses, I have to it's harder for me to adjust, right? And so as I'm walking, this barn owl, they have beautiful little fluffy white faces. And it was flying towards me, went past me, but it got really close. And just seeing that moment of beauty was like, wow. And the only way I get to see that is because there's nature around me. And a glimpse of a wild barn owl is just magnificent. And it's such an honor and a privilege to get to have the ability to break free from the corporate life. from the industrialized life and be with your children in nature. Because none of us know when we're gonna go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have a husband who can let you live in a place where there's like nature is possible and you're within distance of it in a reasonable time frame, that is a blessing. And I do understand how some people can look at New York City and think that's life. Live in a $5,000 tiny Harry Potter sized closet. Your only view is your neighbor's window, and it's taxi cabs and crime, and that's supposed to be the height of progressive modernity. But I'd argue going back to touch base with who we are as creatures in a sense means spending time in nature. And at first when you do this, it feels kind of weird and performative. You don't really see it. Like, but the more you do it, it's like the city veil over your eyes gets peeled back and you just start to notice things more. And so this whole journey where I'm actually able to notice, slowing down and noticing different flowers, plant cycles, and different trees cycles, it shows you the movement of time. Because we only have so many Ramadans left, right? When you really look at it, we think, oh, Ramadan is like this measurement of time. How many do you have left? But the seasons are also that as well. How many seasons do you have left? How many more cycles of seeing that tree blossom or bear apples or bear pears and cherries? How many more of those do you get? How many more harvests do you get? And the thinking about how when you plant a tree, that generations after you, inshallah, will be able to appreciate it and have its shade. It shows you that planning for your future descendants is a very noble act, right? Because when you plant the tree, you got to take care of it, you got to watch it, and it's this little itty bitty fragile thing. And then you look at how some trees, they're so mighty when they grow, and you're like, wow, that tree made it. Every day that tree made it, and I get to be in its shade. And then when you see a falcon, a hawk, a vulture, a barn owl looking at you in the highest part of the tree, you're like, wow, this earth is amazing. I don't get that from skyscrapers in New York City, and I've been to New York City, I've seen the Statue of Liberty. It's just disgusting. I don't think there's anything special about our crappy architecture. Now, if they did like living walls, I knew a lady who was in my ceramics class who designed living walls and encouraged office buildings to have like walls in their forum where there's lots of plants and a fountain. Those are cool. But why do we like looking at zombie apocalypse stuff where it shows buildings have been taken over by plants? It's almost like we stop and realize how ugly our architecture is. I'm not saying we all have to live in teepees or log cabins, but there is something ugly about tall buildings that block out your view of depth. Where, like, think about a tree. Each tree is completely different in a way. Each branch is this way, it's that way. How much do you look at this? Like, go up on a high building in New York City. You look at all those buildings and you're like, this is ugly. Personally, is what I think. Like, this is ugly. I go hiking, I see this huge valley, these different trees. And in the autumn, the trees all having these different shades of orange and yellows and browns. And you're like, this is beautiful. There's awe-inspiring. I don't get that with a city. And I think a lot of people use heavy amounts of drugs to cope. Whereas when you go to nature and you see a weirdo getting high, they use it to enhance their fun in the forest. I don't know if I'm making sense with what I'm trying to explain. It's like if someone is having a sip of whiskey by a giant oak tree, they're soaking in the beauty of the tree. When you're in the ugly city and snorting cocaine, there's no beauty around you, so you have to create it in your head with a toxic illusion that's killing your body. And this means they go harder and harder with their drugs. And the people who work in the financial district, staring at screens and graphs, making phone calls, living on their devices, there's zero nature around them. They're not as happy. I mean, they got their money, they got their whores, but they're not really as content with life and or appreciating life as well as somebody who has at least slowed down and done some gardening, done some hiking, gone fishing, has a chicken coop, planted trees that his children will enjoy. There's just something to it. I hope I'm making sense with what I'm trying to explain. And so, pardon me, when I look at the trees in my community, I appreciate them all. And it's wonderful having them around because there's so many. And places like that don't have trees, where you don't even have the ability to grow plants in your front yard, it's ugly. It's ugly to me. There's no trees. You're not in nature. You're not really enjoying Earth. What is Earth without nature? It's just this dead planet. If you only had this rocky, dry planet, it wouldn't be as beautiful. But because we have different biomes, I mean, even in the deserts, you have the date palm trees, you have cactuses, you have different types of sagebrushes. There's plants that can grow in different regions, no doubt, and the mighty pines that grow in some of the snowiest parts of the world. So each pocket of Earth has this beauty, but we can't deny that the lusciousness of a great forest is more beautiful than the grandest financial district skyscraper, in my opinion. I understand how some modernists in architecture and whatnot would disagree with me. Okay, and I do know that there's some weirdo ladies who they take ayahuasca. Salam Fatum, Salam Busam. I do understand that there's some, weird ayahuasca drinking women who are in the mountains of Machu Picchu and being quite weird. Okay, I get that. I'm not telling you to eat mushrooms and go talk to a shaman in a sweat lodge in order to connect with nature. Not at all. That's haram. I'm just saying that I think trees are, it's like their branches with no leaves look like veins. Their roots cracking through concrete. It's just something to it. How when you have a hill, the roots of the trees hold back the dirt so there's not a giant mudslide into the road. And the beauty of how many fruit trees can you plant and how much food can be made from it. Lemon trees, avocado trees, grapefruits. I mean, just think about how much food is possible if we planted more food trees where people freely can go and get it. It would be something, and how many burros would be fed that we would get to look at and appreciate because we planted more fruit trees. And so when you take a step back from industrialized farming and you just think about an anarchy type of field where there's tons of wild sown orchards of fruit bearing trees and nut trees, how magnificent that would be. And how the smell, like this aromatherapy smell. It brings me back to when my grandma had this elderly friend. Her name was Annie. Her husband died, she was a widow. She had an estate with lots of cherry trees. She was too old to go out there and take care of the trees anymore. Yet the trees remained bearing fruit and were healthy. No pests had come and wiped them out. She told me get a bucket. She had a little bucket, little wooden bucket when I was a kid, and she's like, go out and pick some cherries while me and your grandma talk. And I was this little kid, like 8 years old, with a little bucket with these cherry trees, and there's ladders so you can climb up. And the smell of the cherries, the smell on the ground, but the smell on the soil is like a rich musk. And I'm just this kid alone on the property. There's a fence, right? But I'm alone, and there's these magpie birds, and I'm just like, wow, I can just climb up and eat as many cherries as I want. And my face is all red with cherry juice, and I'm like, wow. And it's like, that's wealth. Imagine you had a stressful day and you just walk in your cherry tree orchard. The smell, the beauty, after the rain, the smell of the fruit and the soil, the wet bark. When it rains in a city, you see garbage, the gutter, a homeless person, like, masturbating. It's horrible. San Francisco is so ugly and so disgusting and decrepit that you're like, it's like a disgrace to the planet, the way cities look. Maximizing space, condensing people in, no beauty of like life. All plants are destroyed. It's all like chip bags on the ground, beer cans over here, a crazy person looking through the garbage. It's not beauty. That's not human excellence. Living like that, I think, is what's making a lot of people sick. And I think the way you start having more content in life is just one of the routes. There's many, but one of the routes is slowing down and looking at the trees. And so something interesting I've been doing is I've been sowing wildflower seeds. So I went to my local garden center and I asked them where the wildflower section was, and I got me a big old bag of native California wildflower seeds. And I just started sowing them. I've done this before, but the deer pretty much ate them. So I didn't really get to enjoy looking at them, but the deers got fed. But this time I sowed them in many places, and I'm hoping next year we'll see them bloom because I kind of missed the rain season window. But the seeds will still last, and so we'll see. Some will get eaten by squirrels, no doubt, or birds, but, hopefully some of them make it. But I started doing that. So just pushing my stroller, I have some seeds, I toss them out, because adding beauty to the world, it's like visual therapy for people. Realizing that we live on a planet where we have the ability to see all kinds of plant life beauty. Where it's not just these disgusting, like, shopping centers. It's like living in under the freeway. You can marvel at a bridge. But don't forget to marvel at the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did the people of Ad and Thamud do? Like, think about how in the Quran we're told there are people who built their homes in the sides of mountains. That's amazing and probably look beautiful, but they're gone now, and Allah did away with them. To me, that's a reminder that your buildings are nothing and they'll be destroyed. Look at how many ruins there are of lost civilizations, and how Allah took them away, and how nature reclaimed a lot of them. Plants, dirt's overgrown, erosion from the rain, tornadoes. How a tornado even, and earthquakes, are going to reshape the landscape. Okay? So your little engineering, yes, it can be advanced in some regards, but don't get too high of a self-esteem. Like the atheist with the arrogance and the architecture. I'm not saying I don't like indoor heating and air conditioning. I'm just saying, when you slow down and you appreciate nature, you want to preserve it more. And kids that get more relaxed in nature than they do in these inside these buildings. Think about how kids have fun playing in a creek. That's more healthier for them. Watching fishes, trying to catch frogs, than staring at an iPad. You get older, you want to read online. I do that, you know. It's alright. But kids deserve to have access to nature. And it's quite wonderful. And so I've been looking at, like, what's edible? What flowers are edible? Which pine needles are edible? And really incorporating that into food, into what I make. What plants can I make tea from? It's fascinating just how much food Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And how that all plays into our body, our health, our mental health. It's just remarkable. On that note, Ryan Long did a comedy special where... Sorry, a comedy skit, not a special. Where he had those Oculus glasses on, the metaverse of Zuckerberg, and he was in a bathtub, hadn't showered for a long time, and was, you know, doing gross stuff with a woman with the goggles on. And it was just highlighting how people will live in these super small spaces and plug in. And then you have to look at that and be like, in the digital world, they'll want to make it beautiful. But in the actual world, you will see that there's beauty all around you. You just have to pause and appreciate it and adapt yourself to it. It's just fascinating. Thinking about how much even ants march. Eating other things, cleaning up the ground. You go in the grass, there's all these bugs going around, spiders. In the air, there's things moving, and it's all moving. It's wondrous. There's always something to look at. But instead, it's like debauchery is more present. I really appreciate the ability to stop and look at nature and slow down in motherhood. And all the vast amounts of knowledge. Like, I have a birch tree by me. My grandma also had a birch tree. But there's a chaga mushroom thing that grows on a birch tree. And you drink tea from it, and it tastes really good. Like, I bought some. It's like, what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us these trees, and we can make tea from their bark. Rosemary, basil, mint, chamomile. So many things. Dandelion. Spinach, arugula. Like, wow. Thyme, dill. Oregano, marjoram, tarragon. Wow. So many things to flavor our food, to season our food, and how the plant life is just rich. So, don't forget that, is my point. If you have a yard, plant a tree. Learn about it. Appreciate it. There's some beautiful trees that they smell so sweet. And like they're the yellow little puffballs. I haven't learned all their names, but they like you walk by them and their scent in the air is wonderful. And somebody planted that. And somebody in a nursery kept the seeds so that they could be planted somewhere else. And someone had to study, to learn, to maintain those seeds. It's like there's so much knowledge. So much knowledge in the world for us to dig into. There might be a time like where we don't have that kind of knowledge. But while we have it, let us appreciate it. You know what I mean? Okay, if any of you have any questions, I can answer some of your questions now. I'll be ready to do Q&A. I got most of my ideas out there. So I'll pay attention to the chat as I keep talking, but I'll pause and answer some of your questions. So if you have any, now will be the time, because and if you ever have questions for me in the future, you can message me on my blog. I'm not going to respond to you on Instagram, and I'm not going to respond in the comments because I'll let the comments be more free. In the past, I used to reply in the comments, and then trolls would say, like, oh, she's going crazy. And I'd be like, don't you want me to respond? But people would keep misinterpreting my points. You have a question, Farooq? Okay, ask. You know, so I don't respond in the YouTube comments anymore. And so during the live streams and on the blog, like if you ask me something in the blog, I'll respond. Inshallah, if it's appropriate. If you ask anything inappropriate, you'll just be removed from the blog. But going behind a paywall and turning my Instagram profile to private after 4 years has done a lot to keep out scammers, bots, and trolls. As said, that's such a good idea to throw seeds in your community. Yeah, people say that bees are part of the food chain, right? They're like they help the ecosystems, and that birds eat butterflies and dragonflies, but they need flowers, and so people aren't planting as much, and so why not me do it? And these wildflowers, they're drought resistant. They're native to the climate of California, so that means the local insects gonna need those plants, and some of the local flowers the hummingbirds like. And so the hummingbirds, I also get to notice them too because of their squeaky noises they make. They need some flowers too. It says I'm actually going to start doing that. Thanks for the idea. Mashallah. And I hope you do. I hope you do. Fruk says, you have read many books, and I watched almost all videos. Which books you like the most and why? That book is unique or different than other books. There was one book, The Wisdom of Yorkshire. I think they pronounce it Yorkshire in England. I'm not sure. It was full of a lot of witticisms, and I like sassy, creative witticisms. That was one of my favorite short books. Because you don't know what's coming on the next line. I would say that's... Because, see, sometimes I have nostalgia for a past book I read, and then my opinion changes. But right now, how I feel, I think that book, Yorkshire, there's a playlist on my channel, is one of my favorite. It says, I do throw seeds out into my garden for the local birds and squirrels. We also have cats and foxes. Foxes are great. Foxes have a funny cry, and they eat a lot of chickens, you know? But cats are awesome. They are. Even though I think cats secretly want to take over the world, you know? I always wanted to have a Persian cat, you know, the ones with the smush faces that look really angry. I really like those cats, because... And, Maine Coon cats, I believe the other ones are called. They look like something out of Alice in Wonderland, those cats. I also have a bird feeder, so I have a lot of bird seed that I put out. It says, do you have a book list? I don't. Of my top ones, I haven't really made a formal list yet. When it comes to books, I flow with it, I go with it. I have books I want to buy, or books I want to read that I haven't got to put on the channel yet. But like books where I say you should read this, this, and that, I haven't compiled a formal list. It says I have 4 cats. Oh, mashallah. And my favorite color of the cats is that bluish gray when they have yellow eyes. YH says the foxes are getting brave. They come out during the day, not just at night, and their cries are scary human-like. Oh, yeah. I have a fox pelt right here. Right here, there's a fox pelt. Yeah. They're funny things. Semaine says Instagram is just... You type in my first name, you should see it pop up. It says, I love the blue cats. Yeah, it's like a bluish gray. It's like the color of ash, you know? I like that. Cats, they're interesting. They don't obey. S says 4 cats, 5 kids. Oh, wow, good. I like that. My name is Salwa. Oh, nice to meet you, Salwa. Frick says, but one book changed your life. Why, if you don't mind? One of the books that really made me think a lot was a book called Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. It's on my bookshelf somewhere. Because it was a very tragic romance novel that made me. There's also a film called Anna Karenina, and based off the book. That one really impacted me a lot. Really did. It made me reflect on the dangers of lust. Shoaib Khan said, Milan, I'm your channel from a couple of years. Good, glad you're here. S says, I love your videos, very informative. Thank you. I always try to make my content informative, creative, and something of useful. Osama says, congrats for 40K. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard when you're boycotted and shadow banned, but we're getting there, inshallah. You know, I don't do clickbait and stuff like that, so, you know, the road is slower. And I don't really do debates. Debating isn't really my, like, I'll do debates when, like, maybe my children are a little older, because it takes a lot of mental preparation. It says, I first saw you on the Three Muslims. Show led me to your channel. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's old school, right? That's old back in the day. To me, it feels like forever ago when I was on their channel. Yeah, they had me on a few times. Yeah. It says, yes, your videos are real. I like the video about why us mothers should read and learn to do something with our time whilst at home. Yeah, I try to, yeah, exactly. Yes, perfect. That's something I promote on my channel, and I lead by example. Some people get really mad at me, by the way. I've had some people insult me and say, like, oh, you like, how do they phrase it? I'm trying to recall the insults. They say I upload too much, but it's like, if I was at college, you wouldn't say I was in the library too much. If I took 6 classes, each one is an hour and 40 minutes every day of the week, you would say I'm hard working. And then plus the study time. But when you do it on your own, people think you're like weird or something. I don't know. That's why I try to change the narrative around stay-at-home moms, is that we can read and learn stuff outside of the college system for half the price. You know what I mean? Rick says, are you Native American? My grandfather was full-blooded Cherokee, so I'm Italian and Cherokee. That's my ethnicities. And then born and bred in America, right? So that's what it is. It says, I don't understand why they insult you. If they don't like it, just leave, don't want your channel. I think a lot of it is envy. Because I think when I upload, people see that they can't, like, because I have ADHD, but it doesn't hinder me from studying. So maybe it, like, makes them feel they're inadequate in something, but I use my free time to read. That's what I like. Makes me happy, you know? If they did their free time playing basketball, or, pardon me, something like that, I would be like, okay, you're getting exercise or whatever. Or if they went fishing or something. But people get really offended. You know. Shoaib says, the place where you live is cold place. California has a mixed climate. It's more of a coastal cold because of the breeze of the ocean. If you're in the colder season and then the ocean breeze comes, that's chilly. But it's not like the snows of Utah where I grew up. The snows of Utah, yeah, that's cold. But it's a different kind of cold. When you get, if it's raining and you're by the ocean, it's like a wet chill. When I was in Utah, the snow is puffy and soft. And if it gets you wet, the snow, you're gonna be cold. But when I was in Philadelphia, if you go to like the New York area, the ice, the chill bites. It's a more of a biting chill. So there's different kinds of colds. I like snow a lot, so I look at it a little different. But California does have a chill during certain times. Manageable, but you know, you wouldn't want to not have a jacket, you know what I mean? Muxmul says, what do you think about global warming or climate change? Some people don't believe it's real. That's a tough one. It really is tough for me. I took a class in geology. My professor was a smart guy, one of my favorite teachers. He showed us the math, but it's above my wheelhouse. I listen to both sides where they say, oh, it's a carbon tax, 15-minute cities, the elites are still on private jets, Obama's buying beach house property, you hear stuff. And some say, it's just a way to reduce the food supply, like get you to eat bugs, and taxing cattle farmers more, uh, monopolizing the meat production industry. You hear a lot, right? So, there's also cloud seeding that they do programs, weather engineering that they're practicing on. So it's a huge topic. I don't know, like they talk about like the ice age and different seasons of like earthly weather, and I think humans will just migrate. That's what I think. When one place gets too hot, you'll move, or too cold, you move, but there will always be people who live in the desert or who live in Alaska, like in a very cold region. There's, in Siberia, in the tundra, in the savannas, in the rainforest, humans will, interestingly, live in all kinds of environments. I think we'll survive, but I do think pollution is a problem. I think pollution of the oceans is a big problem. And recently, I saw someone talk about, his name was Cash Jordan. The trucks in New York City, because they're fossil fueled, people have higher cancer rates being next to the roads and stuff. And people by airports, the jet fuel and the particles causing cancer in people. So I do think that's a problem, But then the Tesla cars, they were getting frozen, like they were not handling the cold very well. And then the charging stations. So I think there's hope. And I like that my community has hybrid buses, I think that's pretty cool. I think if they just make the cars look cooler, I don't think people will be so opposed to hybrid stuff. But there's a whole stuff about who controls the electric cars and you're being tracked, lack of privacy, stuff like that. So when it comes to the climate stuff, I leave that to the geologists, and I try to hear both sides. But at the end of the day, I know that I don't know. You know what I mean? SubhanAllah, in my community, having cancer is like catching the cold. It's become so common in the young and old. Yeah, it's quite terrifying. Quite terrifying. I really hope future generations figure out the causes and more humane cures, because it's gnarly. Very scary. And water pollution is something I'm really passionate about. I just am... I haven't had this idea of like, okay, why can't we go to Antarctica and take the snow there, bring it back to the water filtration plants, bottle it, and sell it? I don't understand. Maybe that sounds naive of me, but snow is water. Why can't you go scoop up the snow in Antarctica and like bottle that water and sell it? I don't understand why entrepreneurs haven't thought of that. I know it would cost a lot to get started. It says they don't want that. It's like, we got a lot of water, and also, why not do desalination of the ocean? Desalinate it, purify it, but then I wonder if we would drain the oceans and we would end up looking like Mars. Sometimes I think maybe that's how those planets got like that. Maybe they drank up all the water. I don't know. But snow comes for us, and why don't we catch rainwater? In some places, look it up, it's illegal to gather rainwater. I don't understand. Why not have reservoirs to catch rainwater all over the country? Harvest snow, okay? And filter it, bottle it, sell it. I don't understand. That's water. You know what I mean? Shoaib says, sister, our government in India has given Covishield doses in I know company has admitted in court that the can make blood clots, and cardiac, yeah. I was part of the first group. I'm what they call a pure blood. I never got one of those. But I do know some people who had problematic stuff, and I think future generations, they're gonna look into that part of history and have a lot of books to write. You know. Takfarina, salam sister, salam to you too. Frail Magic says view on AI advancements, consciousness. AI advancements are going to be quite scary when they're used for the military, but quite fun when it comes to like art and creating different types of models. AI is here to stay. I do think it's scary though when people like want AI girlfriends or to have a robot and then make it look like a human and then install AI into it, you know, and be with it. I think that's quite bizarre, you know. But when it comes to our human consciousness, I think it's quite unique and beautiful, but also perilous. That's why I do like watching true crime, because I like to look at the darkness and the light. And a robot, for now, will be controlled by us until further notice, machine learning and all that. But AI gave me like video games. Yes, they're addicting, but it is like its own little mini world, right? And AI has helped me have fun creating art. I do like seeing what it comes up with. It's quite fun. Does AI beat me in chess? Yes. You know? Beats me in chess. But when it comes to this use in the military, that's when I start to worry. Only because they won't allow us sometimes to have our Second Amendment, right? Movies like Chappie, you know, if I can have a robot bodyguard, that'd be pretty freaking cool. I think it's going to be good for bionics, so people who've lost their leg, people who, you know, lost some fingers, they can get some robot extensions, you know. I think that'll help a lot of people. But if I can have a giant dragon AI beast that protects me from evil, well then guess what? We're crack-a-lack. Right? So it depends. It depends what the government allows to happen, right? And how evil is the government. Well, someone says, are you following closely what happens in Palestine? Yes, to the point where my mind can handle such excessive bloodshed. But yes, I do follow it. I do, and may Allah protect the believers and help the children there. Anything says, mashallah, you are ideal for Eastern girls who are now adopting Westernization. I hope they see the dark side of the underbelly of Western civilization. It's almost like we're jumping on each other's different fences, you know? But I guess some places they just have to go through that cycle, the highs and lows. You want to imitate the West? Well, you're going to have San Francisco. You're going to have New York City and all the damage that comes with it. That's why I've been doing, I have a playlist called Western Values and I'm going to add to it, but it's time we talk about it. It's time we actually examine the rots under our culture. Shuaib says, you know AI is not that good in writing poems. Trust me, I'm a poet. I write poems too, yeah. Chat GPT. Yeah, I don't like AI poetry, personally. I know some people do. I believe South Park, that comedy South Park, they actually did a comedy where one of the Kyle has a I think it was Kyle. He has a girlfriend and he uses Chat GPT to reply to her texts, and it keeps going and going and gets Kyle into some trouble. And they use Chat GPT to cheat on their school exams. So, yeah, no, I don't favor AI poetry either. Shug, hey, good to see you. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi. Thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with us. Thanks, glad you're here. OG of the channel, Shug. Alright, I was hoping to see you, fam. That's great. It's always nice when we have the classics in here. But, yeah, AI is its own category. I do try to pay attention to what some things Lex Friedman says about AI, even though I know he's a bit of a gatekeeper. But he can kind of talk in a more of a monotone than me. but I still try to pay attention to what's going on in their circles, because it's the future so far, right? Muksmul says, Hadith tells us that the deserts will be green again. Climate change could be real. Huh, good point. S goes, do you homeschool your children? No, I use public schools. I teach them things at home, and I always talk about what did you learn in school to make sure like everything is okay and stuff like that. But if I had like a more land, I would do homeschooling, but it's hard to keep kids and when you don't have a lot of land for your kids to have a break, I think it's harder to homeschool, in my opinion. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to teach math very well. And I don't know any homeschooling moms. And I don't know how to do it with the California state and how it works. And when I look it up, it looks very complicated and stressful. And I can't handle that right now with the toddler. I don't have the mental energy. Maybe when she's older, we can see about it, but it seems so hard to do right now. Would AI consciousness have any theological complications in your opinion? Some people say AI is like a Dajjalic system, that is something ordained for humans to fulfill the shaitan. They will split the ears of cattle, and that we will lead to our own decimation and our own enslavement. That is part of the plan of Allah. We worship our own minds create AI rises to destroy us, and then the final days start to happen. I'm not sure, but at the same time, I think that Allah is in control of all things. He's the Most High. Nothing can escape His will. If it's His will that AI comes and teaches us a lesson, will we use it to do good, or will we use it to do evil? And if we look throughout the earth and see what was of those who came before, there's lots of ruins. Who knows? Maybe Allah will make an example of us. I'm not sure how it'll work, but I wouldn't change my perspective on where I'm going in the hereafter. You know what I mean? It would just make me think like, this is trippy. What a weird planet I live on. Let me survive. That's how I look at Earth now. So if a robot comes in and is like Chappie style, like, human, get on the ground, your government is not happy, I'd be like, ah! I'm running through the forest, and there's those Boston Dynamic robot dogs with machine guns on their head, and I'm like, run! I'm gonna die and survive. Just survive. That's what I can do. Anything says, what do you feel after embracing Islam? I am following you after Habib fight where you reviewed his personality. I'm a huge fan of Habib. Oh, mashallah. Well, I've done a lot of videos on how I feel after embracing Islam, but I definitely feel more contentment with suffering, more strength to endure suffering. I feel less materialistic. I am not afraid for the LinkedIn feminists to not see me as a threat anymore. Pardon me. So what I mean by that is, when you're a high achieving woman, you have like a brain that always wants to be validated by your success, and you can't stop trying to succeed so you prove your existence is worthy on earth. When you have a brain like that, like me, where you become kind of obsessive and myopic, you care too much about what the Ivy League class thinks about you, what the academic class thinks of you, and then you start to just spiral into always feeling inadequate. But with Islam, I feel like I'll be judged by my good deeds, and we have so many opportunities to do good deeds and have our sins expiated. And so I look forward to my accounting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not how I'm being measured with the LinkedIn feminist class. So Islam has allowed me to feel that my human worth isn't defined by the LinkedIn class or the university class, but rather in the hereafter with my maker. That doesn't mean I'm a sloth or I don't try to do good things or push my brain to learn something new. It just means that Allah is swift in accounting. Everything's going to be measured, and I need to make sure I don't ever become nihilistic and cynical about my purpose on earth, my value on earth, and for Allah's mercy. And so I think that benefits me greatly. At least that's what I can say. Is that it has allowed me to feel more in control of my self-worth. My self-worth is no longer linked to Wells Fargo, no longer linked to Chase Bank, no longer linked to what a professor from 4 years ago thought, where I constantly needed the approval of professors. I constantly needed to be getting an A. I had to have that validation. Now I can do that, but it's less tense and sticky, you know? And so Amy says, I would say one thing. When you enter Islam, you will be examined more. Take an example, you put tea, milk, or sugar, but you cannot make a cup of tea unless you burn it and then filter it. Oh, that's a very good point. Very good point. I like that example. It's a very new, unique, niche example. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! No. Sorry, my toddler just tried to grab my tea and my coffee. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. Bye-bye. She's with her dad. Okay, so, the children are back now. I mean, she's with her dad, but she tried to grab my drink. They're gonna go again out. Okay, S says, I see your tafsir as-Sadi set. Yes, yes. I didn't know what a tafsir was when I first came to Islam. And someone told me you should read a tafsir. And then I looked into it, and this was on Amazon. And I bought it, and then I started reading it. So it's very helpful. I have a goal. Allah knows best if I'll actually reach that goal. But I have a goal to read as many tafsir volumes of different, like Ibn Kathir and whatnot, as I can. S says, was it expensive? I don't really recall. I mean, I felt it was affordable because I had the money at the time. So I guess it depends on your budget. You know what I mean? It really depends on what you think you can afford to spend. But I bought it on debit, not credit. If you have to buy it on credit, then I would argue it would be expensive because you're going to pay interest if you can't pay it back fast enough. But because I bought it on debit, it's like you buy it, that's it. I don't know, and you know, inflation at that time was different. And I think I bought that like over 2 years ago, if I recall. And the economy was different. The purchasing power was different, and who knows how much the seller is selling it for on Amazon now. You know what I mean? Prices fluctuate. One thing I don't mind paying for is books. Yeah, I'm the same way. You can get vintage books too. Moma says, I just found out my mother cheated on my dad. I'm at the pool thinking of what to do. She ruined a family of 10. My blood is boiling. I'm afraid I'm going to do something to both of them. Well, what I would do is I would try to go for a very long walk in a very calm area. If you have a river, you can go sit by. If you have an ocean, you can go sit by. Even a fountain. We have fountains kind of around here, so I don't know if you do, but something like that. And then practice on your breathing and calming down and asking yourself, why did mom do that? What's going on? What's the proper solutions? And making sure that you can talk to your mom about her justifications. Not that it's justifiable, but once you hear her reasoning, you can then start to close your heart and pray for repentance and forgiveness. right? So when that happens, you have to think to yourself, okay, how do I help my siblings who are going to struggle right now? Your parents might get divorced, so how are you going to work it out? How can you practice later on forgiving your mother and still maintaining the ties of kin and kinship? Because you got to maintain certain ties, you know, and helping your dad to heal because he's going to need you. You have to be a leader in this situation and manage your feelings. Manage your feelings because it's natural to feel anger, and it's a normal response to disloyalty. And so let your parents argue it out. Make sure no one loses the temper. Oh, Moma says he doesn't know. Oh, if your dad doesn't know, then you have to figure out. Yeah, don't make any rash decisions exactly. You have to figure out, okay, is mom going to tell um your dad? If she's planning to do it, to tell him, okay, the right place, the right time, okay, and then figuring out how you can do reconciliation, keeping tempers cool, because you don't want anyone going to prison. You don't want anyone going to prison. You don't want to lose both parents. When anger flames, because remember, we're called to be patient, and you're gonna have to make sure that healing happens. But if your dad does something rash, or you or your siblings, that's not gonna help anyone in the family to have a broken marriage and then someone's in prison, because prison's not gonna be fun. And you never know, you get a judge, he gives you excessive years. I mean, 5 years of your life, then you go to have a job, you got prison on your record. That's gonna hurt you, your future wife, your children, your college path, your spiritual path. Sometimes you have to say, they did this, they did that, they need to work it out, and then you need to maintain your mental health. And you should stay sober, number one, I should say. You have to stay sober. No smoking weed. No drinking. Okay? Boma says, the anger and betrayal is very overwhelming. I can't think straight, but your words are calming. Thank you. I'm sorry for being negative. Don't be sorry for being negative, fam. You know that to me, that's not really negative. That's just pure raw honesty. And so I don't see that as negative. But it'll feel overwhelming, and that's why you have to concentrate on your breathing. You can make some type of remembrance to Allah. You say Alhamdulillah for everything. And understand that Shaitan wants you to overreact. So Shaitan caused a wedge in the family. He wants it to be worse. How can he make it worse? By someone going to prison. Okay? And how do people go to prison? By using violence instead of their words. So you have to make sure you don't fall into the plots of Shaitan. Your mom later is going to cry and confess to you why she did it. Is she going to marry that adulterer? Is your father going to divorce? How the children going to be split up? Strategically and logistically, there's more problems that need to be solved. Be the solver. Don't add to the stress. The deed is done. You can't go backwards. You can only go forward now. And you have to look for the best way forward. And how you discovered her adultery, is another thing, because you have to think, okay, dad should know, but how should dad know? When should he know? If he's going to have like an important speech, he has a deadline for work, and you bust this news on him, it might derail his project. Sometimes you got to know when to deliver bad news. And it's sad that happened. And I'm very sorry for that happening to you. But you have to make dua. You have to be patient. I know your parents are going to work something out, either a divorce or something. But remember, you're not judge, jury, and executioner, right? Let them battle it out in court with dividing the assets, or however it's going to happen in your local country, in your local city. I'm sure they're going to find a way to stay or go away. But remember, you're still gonna have to have a duty towards your mom later on in her old age, and she gave birth to you and loves you. And remember, her actions of that submission to lust doesn't mean she doesn't love you. Remember that. You know, may Allah protect us, and I hope that everything goes smoothly, brother. Emark says, "Mashallah, I've been following this channel since the beginning. Happy to see you." Thanks, Emark, man. It says, "Allah put you in this position for a reason. May Allah make it easy for you. Ameen, ameen." Moma says, "I appreciate your wise words, sister. Thank you. And keep us updated. You know, stay strong. And remember, prison ain't fun. And Shaitan is only going to laugh at you. He's only going to laugh at you if you do something reckless. I watch a lot of true crime stories. You'd be so surprised how many people wish they would have had patience and responded differently. You know, it's a cold world out there. You know. It says, Allahumma Amin Ya Rab Alameen. Ameen. Yes, fam. And so, we have to keep our families together. And, you know, it's a difficult task that a lot of people are faced with. Very, very difficult tasks. But hopefully you all can make sure you do good in your lives and that everything turns out the way it's supposed to be. Okay, fam, my toddler is banging on the kitchen door, so I'm gonna go hang out with them. They're gonna leave again, but she's probably gonna try to tackle the tripod here, which won't be fun. Or she'll throw a tantrum because she cannot grab the tripod, which is funny, but not good for my phone. Because if she breaks it, you know, it's not gonna be good. And she's really innocent. Toddlers don't know anything, you know. They're so little. And so I'm gonna say bye to them before they go on their second walk by the river ocean thing. And thank you for everyone tuning in. I really hope that you get to learn more about herbs and using them in cooking, paying attention to the trees in your community, planting a tree, and slowing down in motherhood and enjoying the vast amounts of knowledge that are on there. If you'd like to support my work and read other things that I write about, you can do so via my blog, which is www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.